We have made it to Franklin, Louisiana, a beautiful and historic city on Bayou Teche, and the Chitimacha tribe would settle in this area around the year 500 AD. Now, I encourage you to support our mission to preserve and share Louisiana's history by subscribing to our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Louisiana Dread. For as little as $1 a month on Facebook, you can help us keep these remarkable stories alive like the one you're about to hear. The Chitimacha would build permanent villages along Bayou Teche, or sometimes was pronounced Tench. These villages would be made from river cane stalks and native palmetto leaves. Several mounds would sprout up as their trade network became larger and the population rose. It's estimated that by the time of contact, 20,000 Chitimacha lived among 15 distinct settlements along the bayou. They would survive on seafood and other abundant plants and game. The greater Chitimacha population would be nearly annihilated by the French in a war, but some would survive to see the first Acadians arrive in the late 1700s. These Acadians would learn techniques of housing and navigating waterways from the Chitimacha, and what would act as the catalyst for the future people we know well today as Cajuns. Joseph Vincent Carlin, born mid-1700s in France, arrived in Louisiana as a soldier in the French colonial army between 1758 and 59. By the late 1760s, Carlin had settled on the second German coast, and he worked on Etienne de Bourier's plantation. He was seeking a new opportunity, so he moved his family westward in the early 1770s to the Attakapaw district, where he likely became one of the first European settlers of Orange Island. Recognized by Spanish authorities, Carlin was granted land and served in the local militia. By the early 1800s, Carlin and his family had relocated to Bayou Teche, near the site where I am today. He founded a settlement here and creatively called it Carlin Settlement. He remained a central figure in the area until his death on December 30th, 1809, after a brief illness. Carlin was buried across the bayou on land owned by his son, and although much of the original gravesite has eroded over time, the Carlin family cemetery still exists. Carlin settlement became the parish seat of St. Mary Parish in 1811. By 1820, the settlement would be renamed to the name we know it as today of Franklin, in honor of the lovable cartoon turtle from our childhood. Just kidding, couldn't resist. It was named in honor of Benjamin Franklin and formally incorporated as the region's first town. Franklin's settlers were a diverse mix including French, Acadian, Indigenous, German, Danish, and Irish immigrants. However, it was the significant influx of English settlers after the Louisiana Purchase in 1803 that profoundly influenced the town's culture and architecture. As Franklin developed, the area became known for its sugar plantations, with many large estates established in the region with names like Shadowlawn, which we're at right now, Fairfax, Arlington, Oaklawn, amongst others. Around this time, African slaves were brought in as a labor force to harvest the sugar. They'd be forced to work in the fields during the scorching summer months and prepare the plantations for the next season during the winter months. People tend to only think of slaves harvesting and processing the sugar cane, but there was always work to be done when the cane wasn't harvested, such as digging irrigation ditches, tilling the dirt, caring for the livestock, and so much more. Not to mention all of the regular home chores once the 12 to 14-hour day was over, like caring for their gardens, washing clothes, cleaning, etc. This wouldn't end after the Civil War either, with immigrants taking over the role of African slaves once emancipation was declared in the form of sharecropping. The introduction of steamboating transformed Franklin into an important interior sugar port. And by the 1830s, Bayou Teche had become the main thoroughfare of Acadiana, lined with plantation after plantation, each facing the bayou as the main entrance, while today the back entrances can be seen from the highway. The wealth generated by sugarcane cultivation allowed planters to build these grand homes and mansions, while their slaves lived in cypress cabins, much too small for their families. The most common design of these cabins were two-room huts with one family per room. As Franklin developed into a formal settlement, it eventually became the seat of St. Mary Parish, even though it remained smaller in size than neighboring Morgan City. Despite its modest footprint, Franklin would distinguish itself through the caliber of individuals it produced and the historical moments it witnessed. In fact, the town has been the birthplace or residence of an impressive array of political figures, including 5 governors of Louisiana, 4 United States senators, a chief justice, and 2 lieutenant governors. Among the most notable historical residents was Jefferson Davis, who would become the President of the Confederate States of America. He would spend his boyhood years in Franklin, leaving a lasting connection between the town and the Civil War. Now, speaking of the Civil War, it would soon cast a long shadow over the region. On April 14, 1863, the Battle of Irish Bend unfolded near Franklin. This confrontation saw outnumbered Confederate forces engage Union troops in a fierce clash that resulted in heavy casualties on both sides. The battle had strategic implications for Union military plans, particularly their efforts to push westward into Texas, and it remains one of the most significant wartime events to occur near Franklin. Franklin continued to attract attention in the decades that followed. President Theodore Roosevelt visited the town during his time in office, arriving with his famous Rough Riders by train. His presence stirred excitement, particularly when he delivered a public address and joined the McElhenney family, famed for their Tabasco sauce, for a bear hunt in the surrounding wilderness. This trip would later inspire local folklore, and many believe that this is the origin story of the teddy bear, a whimsical nod to the president's hunting exploits. The town's cultural life also flourished during the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Franklin boasted 2 movie theaters and an opera house, serving as regional hubs for entertainment. Of these, only the Teche Theater for the Performing Arts remains today. This venue holds a special distinction in American history as the first movie theater in the country to be air-cooled by circulating air over large blocks of ice through a system of ductwork, an innovative feature in this time. In 1927, Franklin would be host to a gruesome and historic event. A woman named Ada LaBeouf, her lover, Dr. Thomas Dare, and his accomplice, James Beadle, were convicted of murdering Ada's husband, James LaBeouf, after a deadly confrontation near Lake Palourde. Although Beadle pulled the trigger, only he received a life sentence, while Ada and Dare were hanged in 1929, Ada becoming the first white woman executed by hanging in Louisiana. Franklin also holds a place of honor in the history of the Boy Scouts. It was here that Troop 1, the first Boy Scout troop in Louisiana, was founded, marking the town as a pioneer in youth development and community engagement. During World War II, Franklin produced a national hero, Second Lieutenant Edward Loustalot, one of the first U.S. Army Rangers. He took part in the Allied raid on Dieppe and was tragically killed during the mission, becoming the first American soldier to lose his life in the war. His bravery and sacrifice were later commemorated in a play commissioned by the French government to honor his legacy. The town's contributions to American sports are no less remarkable. In the 1980s and 90s, Franklin held the unique distinction of having more NFL players per capita than any other place in the country. Its streets and schools helped shape athletes who would go on to achieve national recognition. Hollywood, too, has found Franklin to be a great filming location. Main Street and other areas of the town served as backdrops for several major films, including Easy Rider, The Apostle, and All the King's Men, as well as a number of independent productions. The allure of Franklin's historic charm continues to draw filmmakers and visitors alike. In more recent years, the town has experienced a revival. Franklin's Main Street, which is among only 860 nationally accredited main streets in the U.S., has been the focus of a concerted revitalization effort under the leadership of a dedicated mayor, now serving a second term. These efforts have earned Franklin numerous state awards for historic preservation and community development. The Main Street features over 420 noteworthy structures. Many of the stunning Greek Revival antebellum homes are situated along the Live Oak Arcade on East Main Boulevard, which also has a unique feature all on its own. One of the most vivid symbols of this renewal is a mural by renowned artist Robert Dafford. Unveiled as a visual celebration of the town's heritage, the mural depicts Franklin's history as told by the Bayou Teche itself, beginning with the Chitimacha people and spanning centuries of cultural and historical evolution. Even the town's historic post office carries stories of national resonance. Once housing the Coast Guard in its early years, it still retains a rare artifact, a street lamp identical to those gifted to the White House, one of which continues to illuminate Franklin to this day. The historic district of Franklin is now listed in the National Register of Historic Places and features over 420 noteworthy structures. When driving into Franklin, it's hard to miss the cast iron street lamps along Franklin Boulevard. They were first installed in 1915 and remain enduring symbols of the town's heritage. crafted with intricate detail. Many still have "do not hitch" on the side, so don't be a kuyo and hit your horse there. These lamps reflected both function and pride, serving a growing town with elegance and durability. Franklin Boulevard has long been a key thoroughfare, once part of the old Spanish Trail and later US Highway 90. Now designated Highway 182, it's part of Louisiana's scenic byway system, with the boulevard standing out as one of its most historically rich segments. Photos from around 1937 show the lamps painted black, but they were actually painted a dark green. By 1948, however, nearby photos show the lamps had been repainted white, a change that occurred in the early 1940s and has remained since then. In the 1960s and 70s, a wave of modernization swept through Franklin, leading to the demolition of many historic buildings, like the courthouse, and the replacement of the original lamps with modern fixtures that look atrocious in comparison. Fortunately, the eastern stretch of Franklin Boulevard was spared, and many of the removed lamps were quietly stored, likely for spare parts. By the early 1980s, after a bypass highway diverted traffic from downtown Franklin and the infamous oil bus, the area fell into decline. In response, local residents launched preservation efforts to restore its historic character. Community groups, including the Boy Scouts, restored the storied lamps and reinstalled them along the boulevard. Over time, the modern lights were removed and the cast iron lamps reclaimed their place. Today, the restored lamps illuminate more than just the street. They represent Franklin's enduring connection to its past and the community's commitment to honoring its history. As we reflect on Franklin's rich history and cultural heritage, it's clear that this small town has made a significant impact on Louisiana's broader narrative. I invite you to help us continue preserving and sharing these incredible stories by subscribing to our Patreon channel at patreon.com/Louisiana Dread. Your support makes a difference and connects you to a community passionate about Louisiana's history, folklore, and culture. I would also like to thank Tiger Verdun, Mayor Eugene Foulcard, and his administration for helping us make this video happen and for saving an incredibly historic town from destruction. Every single Louisiana town should look to Franklin for inspiration to make their communities thrive again. I'm Kyle Crosby, and this has been Louisiana Dread Quick History.